Imagine waking up one morning to discover that everything you thought you knew about the person you're about to marry was a lie. And I'm not talking about a small lie. This was the kind of betrayal that could cost me everything I had. My home, my savings, my future, everything I thought I was building with the woman I loved. What do you do if the person you trusted most, someone you thought you knew better than anyone else, was secretly plotting behind your back? I'll tell you what happened to me. Her name was Isabel, and at first she seemed like the perfect match. She was kind, thoughtful, beautiful, everything I had ever hoped for in a partner. We met at a friend's wedding just 2 years ago. I remember the exact moment we locked eyes across the crowded room, the kind of moment that makes you believe in fate. She had this smile that made everything feel like it was gonna be okay, no matter what. We were inseparable after that night. It felt like we were meant to be together. We talked about everything, the future, our dreams, our careers. We talked about the house we were going to buy, about the wedding we'd planned. But the one thing we never talked about was her family. Her parents. Well, they weren't exactly well off. I didn't think much of it at the time. Everyone has family issues, right? But what I didn't know, what I couldn't have known, was how far she would go to keep their secrets, and how much she would be willing to sacrifice to protect them. It started with little things. At first I thought she was just stressed. But when you've been with someone long enough, you start to notice when they're hiding something. Isabel was acting differently, more distracted, secretive, like she had something weighing on her. And then one night I came home to find a real estate agent's letter on the kitchen counter. A letter addressed to her. I thought it was a mistake. She must have opened it by accident, but when I asked her about it, she didn't react the way someone would if they'd made a simple mistake. There was panic in her eyes, fear. In the basement, waiting. You just have to have bad luck sometimes. I didn't get it. What is this? I asked her, holding up the letter. Why is our house listed for sale? Her voice was shaking as she tried to explain, but the more she talked, the more the pieces didn't fit. She said it was nothing, just an inquiry. She said it was a mistake. But I knew her. I knew when she was lying. The truth hit me like a ton of bricks. Isabel wasn't just selling our house. She was trying to sell my house. Our home. The one I had worked so hard for. To pay off her parents' mortgage. She had been hiding this from me for weeks, behind my back, without telling me, without even asking me. She didn't just make a mistake. She didn't just think this through. She made a choice. And it wasn't for us. It wasn't for me. It was for them, her parents. How could I have missed it? I'd thought I knew her. I thought she was someone I could trust with everything. But now, I didn't even recognize the person standing in front of me. It was supposed to be a happy time, right? Our wedding was only a few months away. We were supposed to be planning our future, picking out the flowers, choosing the music. But instead, I found myself standing there, heartbroken, asking myself, how could she do this to me? What would you do if you were in my shoes? Would you walk away from someone you thought you knew? Would you ever be able to trust them again? I know I couldn't. So I did what I had to do. I called off the wedding. And that's where this story truly begins. My name is Nathan Caldwell. I guess when you hear a story like this, you always wonder about the person telling it. How could someone get themselves into a situation like this? But to understand the choices I made, you have to understand who I was back then. I'm not the type of person who goes looking for drama or who expects the worst from others. I've always believed in love, in loyalty, and in family. Those things have always been the foundation of my life. I'm a simple guy. I work as an architect. I love what I do, and I've always taken pride in building things with my own hands, whether it's a new project at work or a life I'm building with the woman I love. When I met Isabel, I thought I had found everything I'd ever wanted. She was beautiful, intelligent, kind, everything I could have asked for in a partner. And more than that, she was real. I didn't have to pretend to be someone I wasn't around her. I could just be myself. It felt like we were in sync, like we were two halves of a whole. We got engaged after 2 years of dating. I had no doubts. I was convinced I had found the one person I was supposed to spend the rest of my life with. We talked about everything, about our future, about the family we wanted to have one day, and about the house we were going to buy together. We even picked out the color of the living room walls. It was supposed to be our dream house. Nothing, at least nothing I could have imagined, was going to tear that dream apart. In the beginning, everything felt perfect. I thought we had it all figured out. We talked about saving up for the wedding, about where we wanted to go on our honeymoon, about starting a family. It was all laid out, one step after the other. We were going to do it together, and for a long time, I really believed that. Isabel, or Izzy as I always called her, came from a good family, but they weren't exactly wealthy. They lived in a small, modest house in a quiet part of town, and while they were kind and welcoming, there was always this subtle tension when it came to money. Isabel never liked talking about it, and I never pushed her. I figured that was just a part of her life she didn't want to share. We all have our private struggles, right? She never seemed to want much in terms of material things, and I admired that about her. She was the kind of person who gave more than she took. She volunteered at animal shelters, helped at the local food bank, and did all these small things that made the world a little better, one action at a time. But there was something I never understood, something I should have picked up on earlier. Isabel had this burden she carried, the pressure of her parents' mounting debt. They weren't terrible people, but they'd made some bad decisions over the years, and now they were struggling. Isabel was their only child, and I think she felt responsible for fixing it. She kept it hidden from me, like she had kept so many other things from me. The thing is, Isabel was always good at hiding the cracks. She was good at pretending that everything was okay, that she was fine, when really, she was holding everything together with one hand while she tried to keep her own life intact with the other. She never told me how bad things had gotten, never said how much trouble her parents were in. She just kept going, like everything was normal. And I believed her. In hindsight, I think that's what I fell in love with. The part of her that always acted like everything was fine, that always had a smile on her face no matter what was happening behind closed doors. But I didn't realize that this constant facade was taking a toll on her. She wasn't just trying to fix her parents' problems. She was trying to fix herself, and that was something she couldn't do alone. If I'd known then what I know now, maybe I could have helped. But I didn't. I didn't see it coming. Everything seemed perfect, or at least it felt perfect. We spent months planning the wedding. We found a venue, picked out the food, the dress, the suits. It was supposed to be the happiest day of our lives. We were making plans for our future. And it felt like we were on the same page about everything. We were fixing up our new house, putting in new flooring, painting the walls, getting everything just right for our new life together. That was the kind of life that most people dream about. A beautiful home, a loving partner, a bright future ahead. I was excited. We both were. But beneath the surface, something was wrong. Isabel's mood started to shift. She became quieter, more withdrawn. She'd come home from work looking like she'd been carrying the weight of the world on her shoulders. I thought it was just stress from the wedding, from all the planning. But the more I tried to talk to her, the more she shut me out. She stopped sharing things with me, stopped opening up like she used to. I'd ask her about her day and she'd smile and say, "Everything's fine, don't worry." But I knew something wasn't right. I had learned over the years that when someone says everything's fine, that's usually the first sign that nothing is fine. Then there were the late-night phone calls, the mysterious trips to meet with friends, the secretive text messages. She'd always make excuses when I asked her about it, but I could tell something was off. I remember one night I stayed late at the office and came home earlier than expected. Isabel was in the kitchen, hurriedly stuffing papers into her bag. She looked startled when she saw me, like she hadn't expected me to be there. It wasn't a huge thing, but in that moment, something inside me told me to pay attention. But I didn't. I brushed it off. After all, she was my fiancée, right? We were getting married. We were supposed to be in this together. I didn't realize that while I was out at work, believing everything was fine, Isabel was making decisions that would change everything. I didn't realize that while we were planning our wedding and picking out wallpaper for the bedroom, Isabel had already made a decision that would jeopardize everything I had worked for. And that's when it started, the slow unraveling of everything I thought I knew, but I didn't know it yet. At least, not until the letter arrived. It all started with small things, little changes in Isabel's behavior that I didn't notice at first. Maybe because I didn't want to see them, or maybe because I was too wrapped up in the excitement of planning our future. But eventually, the signs were impossible to ignore. At first, she became distant. She'd always been the type to check in during the day, send a message here and there, ask how my day was going. But now, she was too busy to answer. Or when she did, it felt off. The texts were short. Her voice, when she answered the phone, lacked the warmth it used to have. She'd brush off my attempts to connect, saying she was just tired or had a lot on her mind. I thought it was just stress. We were getting closer to the wedding date, planning the big day, working through all the little details. The pressure was building for both of us, and I figured maybe she just needed space. It seemed like a normal thing to go through before such a big life change. But then something else happened. It was the mortgage papers. One afternoon, I was going through a pile of old documents, bills, receipts, some paperwork for a new project at work, and that's when I saw it. There was a thick stack of papers wedged between a pile of unopened mail. It didn't look like something Isabel had left for me to sign, which is what I thought at first. But then I saw the top sheet, the address, our address, and then the words property listing agreement and for sale. I froze. I thought I was seeing things. I couldn't make sense of it. I read the paper again, my heart beating faster with each line. There it was, our home. The house I had worked so hard for, the house we had spent months fixing up, the house that just a few weeks ago had been the center of our plans for the future. Isabel had signed a listing agreement behind my back. She was trying to sell our house. And worse, she hadn't told me about it. I couldn't breathe. I had to sit down. Everything I thought I knew about our life together was crumbling. My mind raced. How long had this been going on? Why had she kept it from me? Was this some sort of misunderstanding? A mistake? But deep down, I knew it wasn't. This was something deliberate. I could feel it in my gut, the cold sweat on the back of my neck, the sense that I was about to uncover a truth I wasn't ready for. I grabbed my phone and dialed her number, my hands shaking as I waited for her to pick up. When she did, I barely recognized her voice. It was distant, almost robotic. I tried to keep calm. But my voice cracked as I asked, "Izzy, what is this? Why is our house listed for sale?" There was a long pause on the other end of the line, a silence that stretched too long. And then her voice came through, quieter than before, almost apologetic. "I can explain," she said, and for the first time I heard something break in her voice. Isabel came home that evening, and the atmosphere between us was thick with tension. There was no warmth, no tenderness. There was just the sharp sting of betrayal hanging in the air, and neither of us knew how to address it. I didn't wait for her to sit down. I handed her the listing papers, my hands trembling. "Is this true?" I asked. "Why didn't you tell me about this?" She took the papers slowly, her eyes avoiding mine. She seemed so small in that moment, like a woman who had been carrying a secret too heavy for her to bear. And then, she finally spoke the words I never expected to hear. "It's not what you think, Nathan. I was going to tell you, but I didn't know how." The truth came out in pieces, like shards of glass cutting through the air, jagged and painful. Isabel explained that her parents, as I had vaguely known, had always struggled financially. But what she hadn't told me, what she had kept hidden from me, was how desperate the situation had become. Her parents had taken out loans they couldn't afford to pay back. They had borrowed money from everyone, family, friends, even payday lenders, and now they were on the verge of losing their home. Isabel's mother had fallen ill, and her father, despite his best efforts, was working 3 jobs just to make ends meet. I couldn't watch them lose their house," Isabel said, her voice shaky. I couldn't let them end up on the streets. I thought if I could just sell ours, I could pay off their mortgage. It would fix everything. I thought I could do it without you knowing, without you getting involved. I thought I could make it work." I was stunned. I couldn't find the words. I wanted to yell. I wanted to scream at her. But there was this part of me that understood. Just a small part of me. Isabel loved her parents, and I could see how much they meant to her. She was desperate to fix things, to make them better. But she had crossed a line I never thought she would cross. She had sold me out without even telling me. I was supposed to be the one she trusted with everything, her partner, the person she would confide in. But instead, she had made one of the biggest decisions of our lives without me. And for what? To fix something that wasn't ours to fix? "I didn't know what to do, Nathan," Isabel continued, her voice breaking. "I thought if I could just sell the house, get the money, everything would be okay. I never meant for it to hurt you. I never meant to betray you." I stood there, unable to speak. My brain was racing, trying to process what she was saying. But it didn't make sense. How could she think this was okay? How could she think that making such a huge decision without even consulting me was the right thing to do? It wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about trust. It was about everything we had built together falling apart because she hadn't trusted me enough to share her burden, to let me be a part of this, even if it meant I couldn't fix everything. "I didn't trust you enough," Isabel said, almost whispering the words, her eyes filled with tears. "I was so scared. I didn't want to lose you, and I thought if I told you the truth, you'd leave me. So I thought I could do it on my own. I thought it wouldn't hurt you if you never found out." The weight of her confession hit me like a freight train. It was as if the ground beneath me had disappeared, and I was left floating in the aftermath of this revelation. Her reasoning was clear now. It wasn't about greed or malice. It wasn't even about the house. Isabel had been acting out of desperation. She loved her parents so much that she was willing to sacrifice everything, us, our future, our home, to save them. And as much as I hated what she had done, I couldn't completely fault her for wanting to protect her family. But what about us? What about the life we were supposed to build together? Wasn't I her family too? Wasn't I the person she was supposed to trust above all else? It was the worst kind of emotional betrayal, a betrayal of trust, of love, of our shared future. The house, the mortgage, it all felt secondary now. What hurt more was the realization that Isabel had kept something so crucial from me, and instead of facing it together, she had tried to carry the burden alone. And in the process, she had broken something irreparable between us. I wanted to help. I wanted to understand, but I also wanted to walk away. The confusion was overwhelming. How could I stay with someone who had made such a massive decision without me? How could I ever trust her again? She had torn down the foundation of everything we had built. And the more she tried to explain, the more I felt lost. I needed time to think. I needed space, but Isabel didn't seem to understand. She begged, she pleaded, trying to explain how she was sorry, how she never wanted to hurt me, but all I could think about was how she had betrayed me, not just by selling our house, but by betraying the most important thing we had, trust. I was torn between anger and understanding, between love and betrayal, and I didn't know how to move forward. How could I look at her the same way again? How could I ever feel safe with someone who thought it was okay to make such a huge decision without consulting me? To hide something this big from me for so long? I couldn't even look at her the same way anymore. And yet, there was this part of me, this small, foolish part, that wanted to forgive her. She hadn't meant to hurt me. She had done it out of love, out of desperation. But was that enough? Was love enough to forgive something like this? I didn't know, and that was the worst part. I didn't know who I was anymore. I didn't know if I could trust Isabel again. The night was colder than usual. I remember walking back and forth in the living room, running my hands through my hair, trying to make sense of everything Miss Isabel had just told me. The shock of it was still too fresh. I couldn't wrap my mind around it. How could she do this to me? How could she betray the very foundation of what we had built together? I wanted to be angry, but I was too confused to even feel anything other than a gnawing emptiness inside me. Isabel was sitting on the couch, her face pale, her hands trembling in her lap. Her eyes were swollen from crying, but there was something distant in her expression now. Like she knew, deep down, that I would never see her the same way again. "How could you think this was okay?" I asked, my voice hoarse, almost unrecognizable. The anger was starting to rise in my chest, but I was still trying to control it. I wanted answers, and I wasn't going to stop until I had them. "You signed a listing agreement, Isabel. You tried to sell our house behind my back. You didn't even give me a chance to help you. Why didn't you come to me? Why didn't you just ask me for help?" She looked down, and for a moment, I thought she wasn't going to say anything. The silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating. When she finally spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "I didn't think you would understand," she said. "I didn't think you'd want to help. I thought you'd think it was too much. I didn't want to burden you with my family's problems. They're mine to fix, Nathan. I'm supposed to fix them. I didn't want to drag you into this." Her words hit me like a punch in the stomach. She didn't think I would understand? She didn't think I'd want to help? After everything we had been through together, after everything I had done for her, she still didn't trust me enough to share her burdens? The tears started to well up in my eyes, and I wiped them away quickly. I wasn't going to cry in front of her. I wasn't going to show her how much she had crushed me. I had to stay strong. But I felt something inside me break. Something deep, something I knew would never be the same again. "You didn't think I would understand," I repeated, my voice rising, trembling with disbelief. I would have moved mountains for you, Isabel. You think I wouldn't have helped you? You think I wouldn't have understood that your parents were struggling? You didn't even trust me enough to let me in, to help you. You just went behind my back and made a decision that would change both of our lives without even asking me. She tried to reach for my hand, but I pulled it away, unable to look at her. The trust was gone. It was shattered beyond repair. "I'm sorry," she cried, her voice breaking. "I never meant for it to be like this. I thought I could handle it on my own. I thought if I could just fix things for them, if I could just sell the house and make everything better, I would be able to fix everything, for all of us. I didn't know what else to do." Her apologies sounded empty now. They didn't feel real. They felt like a last-ditch attempt to salvage something that was already lost. I wasn't sure if I was even angry anymore. I was just numb. I could feel my mind sinking further into sleep as my body hugged myself too deeply. "You don't get it, do you?" I said, my voice quieter now, almost resigned. "This isn't about the house. It's about the lie, Isabel. It's about the fact that you didn't trust me enough to tell me the truth. It's about the fact that you chose to keep it from me, to make this huge decision by yourself and just hope I wouldn't find out. You don't think that's a problem? You don't think that's a betrayal?" She shook her head, tears streaming down her face. "I didn't want to lose you. I didn't want to lose everything I had with you. I thought if I could fix this one thing, everything else would fall into place." "Well, you've lost me now," I said coldly. "You've lost me because you didn't trust me. You didn't trust us." And in that moment, I knew. I knew that things had changed beyond repair. I had been standing at the edge of a cliff for months, knowing something was wrong, but not wanting to see it. Now, the truth was staring me in the face. And it was a truth I couldn't ignore. It was the hardest decision I've ever had to make. As I looked at Isabel, sitting there, broken and desperate for forgiveness, I felt a deep sadness wash over me. But the anger was still there too. Anger that I couldn't erase, that I couldn't shake. I had spent years of my life building a future with her, dreaming of a life we would share together, and in a matter of days, it had all been destroyed. Trust, respect, love, everything had been crumpled up and thrown away, like it meant nothing. Isabel wasn't just my fiancée anymore. She was a stranger, a person who had kept something so big from me, someone who thought she could fix everything on her own, without even considering me as part of the equation. I thought we had been partners. I thought we were in this together, but the reality was that we hadn't been. The worst part was that Isabel wasn't the person I thought she was. She had done something that was fundamentally at odds with everything I believed in. Honesty, loyalty, transparency. And that kind of betrayal wasn't something I could just forgive. It wasn't something I could just forget. Damn it, Cheng. How had his appearance changed him? How would he get so mean? I stood up, my chest tight, my mind a whirlwind of emotions. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to make her understand that it wasn't just about her mistake. It was about the deception. It was about the fact that I didn't even know who she was anymore. "I can't do this," I said, my voice barely a whisper. Isabel looked up at me, her eyes wide with shock. "What do you mean?" "I can't marry you," I said, my voice cracking with the weight of the words. "I can't marry someone who would betray me like this. I can't marry someone who doesn't trust me enough to be honest. I can't marry you knowing that I'll never be able to look at you the same way again." Her face crumpled and she let out a choked sob. She stood up and tried to reach for me, but I took a step back, shaking my head. "No," I said more firmly now. "I'm sorry, but it's over. The wedding, the house, our future together, everything, it's all over." And with that, I turned and walked out of the room, not looking back. It wasn't just the end of a relationship. It was the end of a dream. A dream I had spent years building, and as I stepped out into the cold night, I realized that sometimes the hardest thing to do isn't letting go of the person you love. It's letting go of the life you thought you were going to have with them. The weeks that followed felt like a slow-motion blur. Time stretched out endlessly, each day a reminder of the void left in the wake of everything that had been lost. The pain didn't hit all at once. It came in waves, crashing over me in moments of solitude and the quiet spaces between life's demands. At first, I tried to fill the emptiness with work, long hours at the office, busying myself with meetings and deadlines that didn't really matter. But no matter how hard I tried to distract myself, my mind kept going back to Isabel, to everything she had done, to how it felt to be betrayed by someone who had once been my closest ally, my best friend, my future. I had thought that calling off the wedding would be the hardest part, but the hardest part came after. The silence, the aftermath. Isabel and I tried to talk a few times, but it was never the same. She would apologize over and over, her voice breaking with regret, but the words meant nothing anymore. How could they? The trust had been shattered beyond repair. The most painful part was that she never really seemed to understand the depth of what she'd done. She never once apologized for the way she had betrayed me, how she had taken away my right to make a decision about our future, how she had chosen her parents over me. Her parents never apologized either. In fact, they seemed to avoid any real confrontation. They acted like nothing had happened, like their daughter hadn't just tried to destroy someone's life to save their own. It was like they didn't even care. I thought I would be angry, but instead I just felt hollow, like I was walking through life with a part of me missing. The house, which had once been our dream, became a constant reminder of everything that went wrong. Every time I passed by it, I couldn't help but feel betrayed again. I kept wondering, did she ever really think what she did was okay? Or was this all just an unfortunate mistake, something she thought would fix everything, but only made it worse? I never got answers. Isabel moved out of town not long after, and I heard through mutual friends that she had found a new place to live, but I never saw her again. And if I'm honest with myself, part of me was relieved. I had spent years with this person, building a life together. And in the end, I realized I didn't really know who she was at all. Maybe I had been too blind to see the signs, too trusting. I was left alone with the fragments of a life that was never meant to be. The hardest part wasn't just losing Isabel. It was losing the future I had envisioned with her. Our plans, our dreams, everything we had worked towards had all been built on a foundation of lies. And now, I was left to pick up the pieces, alone. Underscore, 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 underscore. Underscore, 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 underscore. Underscore, 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 underscore. Personal growth / resolution. It's funny how life works sometimes. When you're in the middle of a storm, you can't see the way out. You just feel the wind howling, the rain pelting down, and you think you'll never get through it. But eventually, the storm passes. It doesn't just disappear, but it calms, and you find yourself standing there, soaked and exhausted, but with a new sense of clarity. Looking back, I can see that what happened with Isabel taught me some of the hardest lessons I've ever had to learn. At first, I couldn't see any silver lining in the mess of it all. But over time, I came to understand that the biggest lesson of all was this: trust is everything. It's the foundation of any relationship, and without it, nothing else matters. You can have love, you can have shared goals, you can have the most perfect moments together, but if trust is broken, if trust is betrayed, everything crumbles. I realized that I couldn't keep blaming Isabel for what had happened. I had to accept that it wasn't just her fault. I had allowed myself to ignore the warning signs, to overlook the small cracks in the foundation that were there all along. I had been so blinded by love, by the future I wanted to build, that I couldn't see what was really happening. And in doing so, I lost a part of myself. But that's not the end of the story. Through this painful experience, I found my strength again. I started to rebuild my life, piece by piece. I took a long look at who I was, what I wanted, what I needed, and what I deserved. And I realized that I deserved someone who would trust me, someone who would choose me in the same way I would choose them, without secrets, without betrayal. I deserved a relationship where trust wasn't something I had to worry about, something that could be taken away with a single decision. I didn't want to settle for anything less than that. The road ahead wasn't easy, it wasn't quick, but eventually I started to rebuild, not just my life, but also my heart. Slowly, I learned that it's okay to let go of something that isn't meant for you. It's okay to walk away from a relationship that no longer serves you, no matter how hard that is. And in doing so, I made room for something better. Okay, I want more details after I hear this, I murmured. I realized that while betrayal can break you, it can also strengthen you. And maybe most importantly, I learned that you have to trust yourself first. No one else can make you feel whole if you don't feel whole on your own. And that's the part I had to rediscover. The part that got lost in the chaos of it all. Isabel and I were part of a different chapter in my life, but that chapter was over, and now I was ready to start a new one. I couldn't predict the future, but I knew one thing for sure. I wasn't going to make the same mistakes again. I wasn't going to let someone else's betrayal define me. I had learned to forgive myself first, and then, maybe someday, I could forgive Isabel. But for now, I had to let it all go. As I stand here now, looking back on everything that's happened, I realize how much of it was out of my hands. Maybe things didn't have to end the way they did, but in a way, I'm grateful for the lessons it taught me. The betrayal hurt, but the growth that came from it was worth more than I ever thought possible. But here's the thing. I still wonder, was Isabel's betrayal just a mistake? Was Isabel's betrayal just a mistake? Was it the result of desperation? Or was there something deeper, something more manipulative at play? Did she truly think she could fix everything by selling our house? Or was there more she wasn't telling me? I'll never know the full story, but I can't help but wonder. Was there more to the betrayal than she ever let on? Or was this just one of those stories of love gone wrong? Maybe some answers are better left unanswered. Maybe that's just the way life works. But one thing's for sure, I won't be making the same mistake again. As I sit here, reflecting on everything that happened, I can't help but think about all of you. Those of you who have been through something similar. Or maybe those of you who are just starting to question the people you trust the most. I've shared my story, and now I want to hear yours. What would you have done if you were in my shoes? Could you ever forgive someone who did something like this to you? Can trust truly be rebuilt after something like this? Or do you think once it's broken, it's gone for good? Let me know what you think in the comments below. I want to hear your thoughts, your experiences, and what you would have done if you were faced with the same betrayal. I know how difficult these kinds of decisions can be, And sometimes just talking about it can make a world of difference. You're not alone in this. Before I go, I just want to take a moment to thank you for listening to my story. These kinds of experiences can be hard to relive, but sharing them, opening up to others, it helps me heal. And I hope it helps you too if you've ever been through something similar. If you've enjoyed this video, or if my story resonated with you, make sure to hit that like button. It really helps spread the word, and it shows me that you want to hear more real-life stories like this. Also, if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Trust me, there's a lot more where this came from. More stories of betrayal, revenge, heartache, and growth. I promise I'm not done sharing yet. And don't forget to turn on the notification bell so you're the first to know when a new video drops. You don't want to miss what's coming next. Remember, no matter what you're going through, you're not alone. We all have stories to tell. And if my story helps you feel heard, if it makes you feel a little less alone in your own journey, then that's what matters most. I know that moving on from something like this isn't easy. It takes time, effort, and a lot of hard work to rebuild trust, whether it's in yourself or in someone else. But remember, no matter what happens, you are in control of your own narrative. Don't let anyone steal that from you. Thanks for being part of this journey with me. Stay strong and remember, your story isn't over yet.